Hi there, Mr. Mayo here, and today we're going to talk about the practice environment. I think everyone agrees that practicing is a crucial part of developing as a musician, but I feel like there's one aspect that we often overlook, and that is the practice environment. This can greatly influence our practice session. I think it's important to find a private space to practice in. Find a space that's free of distractions, and yes, that means putting your phone away or on airplane mode if you're using it for apps while you're practicing. If you don't like people hearing you while you practice, you might want to try to find a practice space away from others. That way you can just focus on you. It's important to think about the acoustics of the space that you're practicing in. If the acoustics in the environment is dull, it's going to lack reverb and it's going to make your sound thin. So essentially, it's going to make you sound worse than you might actually be. If the environment is too live, meaning it has a lot of reverb, it's going to make you sound super powerful, which might give you this false sense of, I have this great sound. So it's important to be mindful of these different practice environments and practice in a variety of environments so you get used to performance situations with those different environments. Be mindful of the space and what it sounds like. Be mindful about what you actually sound like. You might have to have some give and take when it comes to actually where you practice. Unfortunately, a lot of households that have musicians tend to frown upon the actual sound of the instrument. It might be that they think it's too loud, that they're trying to do something else like watch TV. It might be that someone in the house has to sleep due to their job being at a different type of hours. It could be a lot of different scenarios. People may even tell the musician to play softer, but what they're not realizing is that if a young musician learns just to play soft all the time, it builds bad habits where they tend to close up their throat. I think there has to be a compromise on both ends. Perhaps you can find a time that works best for everyone. I know several students who wake up early before everyone else does in their house, gets ready, and while the other people are waking up and actually getting ready, they're practicing because during that time, the people are less likely to really care about that individual practicing. I know some other students that practice just as soon as they get home, so that way they don't have to worry about as many people being in the household. I know some families tell their children to go outside and practice, but you have to be careful with environmental factors. During a spring day or even the summer, that's not necessarily a bad thing. When it's cold, it can really affect the instrument. For a clarinet or an oboe that's made out of wood, the instrument can actually crack in cold weather. So if there's an environment such as a garage, a shed, or a barn that actually has heat and air in it, that actually might be a good practice environment. If not, it might be best just to find a space in your house that's away from everyone else for a certain amount of time. I know some students that will clear out their closets and actually practice in their closets because the walls on either side tend to muffle the sound some, especially if they're able to keep some of the clothing in there to really muffle things out. It really depends on how large the closet is, though. The best strategy is for the family to sit down and agree upon a certain time for the student to practice at indoors. Overall, I think it's important for a family to be very supportive of the musician. Music not only builds life skills, character skills, and allows the opportunity for scholarships to college, but it's a healthy activity. Keeps a lot of kids out of trouble. So I think it's important for those in your household to really support music making, support your growth as a musician, not making fun of any mistakes that you have, and respecting the practice environment that you're creating. Work with your family. I think it's important to think about the materials you need in your practice environment. Of course, the first thing you need is your instrument. For percussionists, this might also include sticks and mallets. The next thing to think about is a chair and a stand. Now, if you're a percussionist, of course, you don't need a chair. And for wind instrumentalists, you might actually want to think about alternating between sitting and standing because you're going to find yourself in performance situations where you have to either sit or stand throughout your music career. The big thing is don't sit on a bed. Beds support poor posture and you find yourself looking down. What occurs when you're looking down is you're actually inhibiting airflow and you're building the bad habit of keeping your head down while you're performing. Make sure your stand's at the appropriate height. That way you're not bending your head up or down in order to read music. Speaking of music, you have to have your music in order to be able to practice. So make sure you have your music ready to go. You need to have a pencil so that way you can mark up your music. Marking should include the mistakes that you're making, how to fix those mistakes, and any problem sections that you really need to work on. Some musicians also like to use highlighters to highlight specific things in the music to grasp their attention. That way they don't make those mistakes over again. Of course, you want to use a metronome while you're practicing, so make sure you have a metronome, whether it's a digital metronome or one that's on your phone or a tablet. Remember, if you're using a phone or tablet, keep it on airplane mode. You also want to have a tuner, that way you can check your intonation and see if you're in tune. Once again, if you're using a phone for this, make sure it's on airplane mode. I recommend keeping a water bottle near where you're practicing, that way you can stay refreshed as you practice. I recommend having your maintenance materials right there at your side, such as reeds, valve oil, slide cream, anything of that nature. That way you're ready to do instrument maintenance right there and don't have to go search for it. Make sure you have your cleaning supplies ready at your side. That way when you're done with your practice session, you can go ahead and clean off your instrument. Also, when you're done with your practice session, it would be a good time to go ahead and do instrument maintenance, such as adding valve oil or slide cream. If you use a practice journal, I would also keep my practice journal right there next to me. That way, when I'm done with my practice session and I'm done maintaining and cleaning up my instrument, I can go ahead and write in my practice journal. Another idea is to have a digital recorder. We talked about the value of using a digital recorder in a previous video, so go check that out if you don't know how to use one. Hope you enjoyed this video over the practice environment. Feel free to subscribe for future videos. Be safe and go practice.